Can't handle the Eastern time zone for nothing.
I really can't.
Soft.
Starting to get a little bit more clarity on the Chiefs' playoff pursuits, who they will be playing, what the field will be looking like. And you know what? We got a little time here. Let's talk a little draft. Let's go.
Let's go.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Member FDIC, our partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. Kent Swanson from Clark Griswold's attic here with my friend Matthew Lane. Matty, how we doing?
Listen, I'm doing great. We got the green light to talk a little bit draft on this show. I'm here. I'm ready. I don't have to be fined. We started a little late because I had to get all of my notes ready for this. We got 112 minutes straight of draft talk coming up here as it relates to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, no.
Let's go. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Everybody tuned in for this right here. It's time.
I just remember, like, Maddie was asking me, like, hey, can we talk some draft today? I think we're going to talk some draft today. I was like, sure. And he's like, do you want to get into the weeds or do you want to talk big picture? And I was like, there's no chance we can get into the weeds. And now Maddie has got notes prepared.
Born in the weeds.
Oh, I don't know about this, guys. I'm not sure. Are my levels fine, by the way? We're going to confirm this. This is kind of on the fly. Are my levels all right? Yes. Springer says yes. Nick Springer, the beautiful voice of the Emprise Bank Reed, is with us today doing the Lord's work behind the scenes. So thank you, Springer. Just wanted to make sure about that. But yeah, this is the case.
You jumped in because I was going to make a testosterone levels joke, but Spring Dog cut me at the knees.
Yeah, well, we need to do some more push-ups. I think is what needs to happen there. But yeah, thanks for everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about what's kind of happened since we last spoke, and we've gotten a little bit more clarity on what's going on in Week 18. We, kind of have some idea of what's going to happen a little bit here with the starters for the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and yeah, we'll get into some draft stuff too. But it looks like we have what were you gonna say?
Wake me up when it's time. Wake me up when it's time to talk draft. That's all.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to carry the first 20 minutes of this show.
Again.
Okay. We know 6 teams that are in the AFC picture. Those teams are the Chiefs, of course. The Bills are locked in at the 2 seed. Then you've got Ravens, Texans. You've got Chargers. You've got Steelers. And now we're kind of waiting to see what happens. The Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Cincinnati Bengals are all potentially the 7 seed in the AFC. I'll tell you what, Maddie, I will say this. The Cincinnati Bengals have like a 4% chance of actually making it. It's a little higher than that, but it's not very high. They do not have a very high percentage chance of making it to the playoffs. But we have kind of learned, like the way that the NFL has set this up, they are giving the Bengals every bit of chance to make this and creating the most drama they possibly can, the biggest storylines they can surrounding the Cincinnati Bengals, because the Ravens are playing the Browns on Saturday right before the Steelers and the Bengals play. The Steelers effectively, the only thing that they could be playing for is NFL or seeding in the AFC, which would be the 4 or the 5 seed. So you're looking at like basically, okay, so the Bengals are going to get like, the Steelers might kind of know their fate for the division before the game is up. Those aren't going to head to head. And then the Bengals might be just playing the Steelers, who might be managing that game a little differently. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what they do there. And the funny thing is, like, that drama, that storyline carries all day Saturday, right? Well, then most likely what's going to happen is the Chiefs are probably going to lose to the Broncos going all out. in this Saturday window, the latest possible window. So there's going to be like a hint of drama throughout the entirety of the day, but there's really not going to be all that much drama for the Bengals. It's kind of manufactured and funny, and like it's a storyline that's not all that real because the percentage chances of the Bengals actually making are very slim. But I just think that's kind of funny.
What? Yeah, I don't know why the Bengals aren't playing at the same time as the other teams that are playing for the final playoff spot. That seems weird when they have so much schedule control. Why is the Bengals Steelers game not at the same time? I think the Dolphins Jets game's in the afternoon, right? It's a later afternoon game, and then the Broncos Chiefs are in the afternoon. Maybe I'm wrong on the timing of the Jets Dolphins. I thought it was an afternoon game. Well, either way, you just oh, okay. You would just think all three of those teams, the Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals, should all play at the same time. Like that would be the proper way to do the schedule. What's up? You're smirking.
I just think it's funny. I just think it's all funny. It's manufactured for a 10% chance of happening, but they want to create the drama and they want to give the best opportunity for that to happen, which I don't. It's funny to me.
What's manufactured? The only thing manufactured to me is this nonsense that anybody cares if the Bengals make the playoffs. Like nobody cares.
That's what I'm saying is manufactured. It's like, oh, there's this real chance. There's this chance that this could happen. There's a chance here, folks. Oh, all this drama surrounding, and like they're trying to drum up this drama for the Saturday games, and it matters to a degree, but still, like there's a very slim chance of it even happening. Like the Jets.
And so I will say for the Steelers, it does matter. If the Steelers win, I think they get locked into the 5th seed, which means they likely go play the Texans. Versus getting the 6th seed if they lose means they go play the Ravens again. So like that's actually a pretty big deal. Like if you're trying to win a playoff game, you would much rather face the Texans right now than you would the Baltimore Ravens, especially if you're the Steelers facing them for the 3rd time. So either way, the Steelers will be playing for something regardless of what happens in like the Baltimore Cleveland game. So I do think that Bengals Steelers game will matter a little bit. The winner ultimately won't matter because it comes down to do the Dolphins win? Because if the Broncos win, if the Broncos win, they're in, or the Dolphins win because if the Broncos lose and the Dolphins win, they're in. So yeah, it doesn't matter for the Bengals. I really don't understand though the nobody wants to see the Bengals. Like I said, where I was going, nobody cares. It's not that good of a team. They're a bad football team. They have a good offense, or rather, they have a good quarterback sometimes and a good set of wide receivers, and they can take advantage of a lot of teams. But when you go back and look, the only good team they've beaten all year, and I'm using good loosely, is the Denver Broncos. The only quarterback that is either started the year for their team and or not been benched throughout the year that they have beat is Bo Nix and the Broncos. They haven't beat a single good quarterback this season. Not a single one. It's a fake good team that if they make the playoffs, whoever they play that's not the Steelers, and they can't in the playoffs, they're going to lose to because they're all going to be better quarterbacks than anybody they've beaten all year. And let's take the long way there. Let's say the Bengals do make it in and they're everyone's nightmare and the Chiefs are so afraid of the big bad Bengals. Well, guess what? In order for the Bengals to ever come face the Chiefs, they have to go ahead and knock off the Buffalo Bills. And I'll tell you what, I'm way more scared of the Buffalo Bills than I am the Cincinnati Fraudgulls. So, Oh man, you want to make me shake in my boots? Please go knock off the Bills and make it so much more difficult for the Chiefs by having to beat this bad football team that's beating nobody good. That's the silliest narrative anybody's run with this entire time. I think what's funny is Bengals win. They think they have a chance. The Chiefs-Broncos game goes real fast. Like, it's just quick. The Chiefs somehow sit on the ball, control it with Carson Wentz. They win that game, or the Chiefs win that game with their backups early. The Bengals are getting excited, and they flip on over to that Dolphins game and see the Dolphins just blowing the brakes off of the New York Jets. And Aaron Rodgers is pulling himself out of the game again to eat some clay. And the Dolphins backdoor their way into the playoffs, taking that final seed while the Bengals thought they had it. That's what I want.
That would be hilarious. When I say manufactured, I just think I think the media narratives and like the whole weekend is set up to follow this storyline of a very minimal chance of anything actually happening. And that's what's so funny to me is like, we're going to sit here and glamorize this whole comeback and the Bengals and blah, 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 9-8. If they, the comeback, they have a 10% chance right now. Like, it's minimal. What could happen? They need 2 things to happen that are very unlikely to happen, which would be the Jets to beat the Dolphins, and of course the Chiefs, who are resting their starters, losing to or beating the Denver Broncos, which I'll be honest with you, I have a hard time seeing happening. So we've heard some stuff coming out. Andy Reid has been non-committal, reporting who will be in, who will be out. Will the Chiefs rest their starters? Will they not? Peter Schrager has come out and said that the Chiefs will not be playing Patrick Mahomes in Week 18 of this game against the Denver Broncos as expected.
What?
He says Carson Wentz will be getting the start. But what is also
No.
interesting to me is that he says that Chris Oladokun will be seeing time for the Chiefs in Week 18. And I wanted to talk about this theory that I have with all of this. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that the Chiefs will put a decent offensive line. I've been thinking about this because I actually put like a projected, starting group out of offensive linemen, like who I think, and I actually kind of walked it back just a little bit because I think what's going to happen is I think the Chiefs are going to put their best, like a decent offensive line in front of Carson Wentz. And I think Carson Wentz is going to get some time, but they don't want Carson Wentz to get hurt either. They want Carson Wentz to be ready for the playoffs in case something happens where, by the way, this team has needed their backup quarterback to step in and make plays for them during playoff stretches in Kansas City. I think they're going to get Carson Wentz some reps. They're going to get him some time, let him play a little bit, and then they're going to hand it over to Chris Oladokun because I think this team is going to try to see what they have with these young offensive line. And I don't know if this team has had the offensive line volume that they've had in previous years to be able to do this. But I think they're going to try to roll out and see what CJ Hansen, Hunter Norzad, Kingsley Suamataia, either at tackle or at guard, or get some opportunities. Ethan Driscoll. They've got 4 rookie offensive linemen on their roster. And I think they're going to try to get all of them in the game at some point. But they're going to put Chris Oladokun behind them and so that they can get a look at this young offensive line group. I don't think that the Chiefs have had the luxury previous years and the depth of the offensive line to be able to do something like this with 4 rookies that they really want to see. So that's why I think Peter Schrager's coming out and saying that they're going to get some, Chris Oladokun some looks, is because I think they want to see what they have with this young offensive line.
I mean, I don't hate the theory. I do wonder what the offensive line does for as of right now, we're leaning towards hoping that DJ Humphries plays. And if he plays, I don't know if I necessarily want Joe Thuney to play. He's played a lot of reps. He probably deserves the time off, but I wouldn't hate seeing DJ Humphries also get a few reps next to him. So I don't know what the offensive line rotation is going to look like. If I was, if I was coaching in that room, I would try to see if the starters would be okay going a series or 2, just to see if you can get Humphrey some reps next to Joe Thuney so they can kind of start getting it together. They obviously have all this practice time to work together and get everything, but that's different than live reps. So I would want to see live reps, even if it can't happen. I do think that you really want DJ Humphries to play and to play well. That probably looks better. He probably feels more comfortable and will play better if Thuney is at least next to him a little bit rather than just some rookies. His development for this hit, DJ Humphries' return to health and development this year matters more to this team than the development of any of those rookies do right now, any of those young offensive linemen, long term right now. So whatever it's going to take to get him most ready to play, I think is the most important part. I wonder if the Oladokun playing aspect isn't more, we're going to get Wentz out there. We're going to let him put together some drives. We're going to let him find a rhythm, show some offense. Hey, maybe this gets him a contract next year as we're having this veteran quarterback revival across the NFL where all these random guys, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, this should be in the MVP race and somehow isn't. All these guys are getting it done. They are becoming starters for teams and been very good. I think Andy's maybe goal is to see if you can have Wentz show enough that somebody will take a shot on him to see if he's the next one of those guys again, and then go to the young player because, well, quite frankly, they need Wentz healthy for the playoffs just in case something happens to Mahomes. We've seen a backup quarterback have to come in and play for this team in the playoffs. We've seen Mahomes take some ankle injuries at various times throughout his career where you want someone to come in. So I could also see from the Chiefs' perspective, maybe not wanting to give Wentz an entire game behind, as we do expect at some point, backup offensive linemen, rookies getting hit a lot. You probably don't want Wentz back there if you were going to rely on him to be your primary backup. So yeah, I could see it from both ways. I just think priority number 1 from this game out of everything that I've heard or seen, get DJ Humphries comfortable and see if he can perform better than the last time he did when he was out there, or at least build on how he was playing in the second half to see if you are getting a left tackle controversy going into the playoffs. Because right now there isn't one because we haven't seen him play. But if he can come out and play well, then there's going to be one, and just whatever's going to make him feel the most comfortable, whether that's Joe Thuney, whether that doesn't matter, we'll find out. But I think that's got to be priority 1 for the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think there's a few ways you can kind of approach that. And if I look back at last year's game against the Chargers in the Week 18 game, just to kind of get a little bit of look at it. And you saw Joe Thuney, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphreys kind of rotating in and out. They're all kind of playing in and out. So they're all kind of playing a little bit. I think Joe Thuney started the game actually at left tackle in that game. Maybe a start record or something like that. What they did is they kind of patched that together a little bit because they benched Donovan Smith for that game. I think they just want to make sure he got healthy. I don't remember if he was dealing with a little bit of an injury or something like that. But they kept most of their offensive line intact this last time around. But the only thing I wonder about that is, do you play Joe Thuney because he's proven to be the most valuable player outside of Patrick Mahomes this season? Because this team is so badly needed stability on the offensive line, he's been the guy to provide it. So do you just bench Joe Thuney and say, hey, like Joe, like let's just keep things, let's protect you because we can't lose you because you've kind of been the guy that's helped solve the problems on the offensive line as far as just like we know the floor of this thing because of you. Do you roll Humphreys out next to Mike Caliendo, who has played some guard here, played some starting left guard reps? It's not the same as getting Joe Thuney out there, but at least it's a guy that's played a little bit recently on the offensive line. Do you go Humphreys, Caliendo over there on that left side? Is that enough of a bridge for, you obviously you want some reps and some chemistry with Thuney. Is Caliendo enough of a bridge for Humphreys there? Like, what do you think there? Like, what do you think you do there?
Again, I think it all depends on what they're comfortable with. If it's not going to matter the DJ Humphreys who plays guard next to him, then fine, you put Mike Caliendo out there. Caliendo should be playing this game. He should be playing this game either way. Whether Joe Thuney's playing left tackle or left guard, Mike Caliendo should play this game. He needs the reps just as much as anyone else. It's just a matter of DJ Humphreys has played whatever it is, like 40 snaps or whatever with Joe Thuney. If he's going to be the guy that's going to be the left tackle in the playoffs, you got to get him out there next to Thuney. He won't have Mahomes back there, which is it's different blocking for Patrick Mahomes. That's going to be Carson Wentz too. So maybe it won't actually matter. Maybe they just want to see him go through the paces more so than what it's going to look like with the starters. I just think that if there's a big difference in what they see in practice and how they think it's going to go about with him playing next to Mike Caliendo versus playing Joe Thuney, you see if you can't get a couple series out of Joe Thuney. Thuney can come out. Thuney doesn't have to play the whole game. You just want to see them do it together a few times and see how they start to mesh, very specifically as run blockers, because that's where I think that we have seen a huge step backwards for this team with the new offensive line like configuration. Obviously, some of the deeper passing stuff they haven't relied on or called as much, so we'll see how it goes. But I think you want to see those two run block together and how they work off of each other's combos and double teams and everything, because we haven't got to see enough of it. And so, yeah, you can get a couple series out of Thuney. I think you try it. If not, it's not the end of the world. You still try to grade and see what Humphreys can do in, a vacuum just based on what he's doing. It's just, I think if we are trying to figure out if he is the left tackle for the playoff run, I would like to see him next to Joe Thuney. I don't care about the rest of the offensive line. The rest of the offensive line can be whoever, but I would like to see DJ Humphreys play next to Thuney because that's who's going to be there when he's there, even if not for the whole game.
I'll hear an argument for it. What I think the most interesting, I tweeted this out, I think an interesting O-line group just to see would be Humphreys, Caliendo, Norzad, Kingsley at right guard, Wanye at right tackle. Like, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think that would be that'd be a fun offensive line to just kind of like a group to see. It's not quite throwing all the young guys to the wolves, but it's also giving it's that we've heard that Kingsley's cross-training at different positions. Is he cross-training a little bit at guard? I'd like to see what he looks like at guard. Does he give you some just like Wanye's look better at right tackle? I'd just be kind of curious. It's like more of fascination of what would look like, if that's the case. One thing that's interesting too, like with just all the roster decisions, like you get two practice squad elevations. So if Chris Oladokun is going to be elevated, which that very likely will be the case, right? You get one more. Do you throw Steven Nelson out there? Is Steven Nelson the other practice squad elevation? Then you just try to figure everything else out with the rest of your group. Like, that's another question here, right? Like, do the Chiefs just go, without any live reps for Steven Nelson, or do they use this as an opportunity to get him some, knock some rust off in a game? Or is this even a thing that's going to, is he just a break glass in case of emergency? Like, I think whether or not he plays might tell us a little bit about what their plans are with him, because I just have a hard time believing they're going to throw him in immediately in the playoffs without any game reps in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, and since the Chiefs have signed Steven Nelson, I do think that you've seen a slight uptick in play from the cornerback room as a whole. So whether it was a kick in the ass, whether it was just, they all kind of figured it out, whatever the rationale is, it does seem like they're playing better. So maybe he always was an insurance policy that they are no longer going to have to break into. And I would agree, if they are not planning on using Steven Nelson, he's not going to play in this game. Or even if he does get called up, he's still going to be buried in the depth chart behind a Keith Taylor, behind Christian Roland Wallace, behind Josh. Like, he's barely going to play, right? And so we'll see if they do plan on using him. If they elevate him up and he goes out there and plays kind of, the majority of the snaps, or as many snaps as like they can get him out there, there's a chance that he's going to factor into the playoff time. So yeah, I do think this game will tell you a lot on what they plan to do with him, like down the stretch here. I honestly think you could say the same thing for, it sounds like McCole Hardman might be able to be back for this game. Like, it's not guaranteed or anything, but it sounds like the same concept. Same thing, right? Like, I think Nico Remigio's done a pretty good job in place of him as a returner. He's had some nice returns. I like how aggressive he is fielding the punts, because he saved a lot of yards, I think, by fielding some that were in pretty questionable areas. And I think they ended up saving yards. So I thought he's done okay. In his stead, you've clearly got the behind the line of scrimmage stuff with Xavier Worthy working. Now you're sprinkling Hollywood Brown back in. Do you really need to add a McCole Hardman back to this mix? Like, what do you really need to? If he goes out there and he plays in this game, if they get him, they activate him, they bring him back and they play him in this game, then they're probably planning on it. If they don't, I don't know if they're just going to drop him back in for the playoffs out of the blue. They could. He's been around forever with this system, so he could either way. I'm just saying, if he is active for this game, then they clearly see a role for him. So yeah, there's some decisions on this roster. I think what they decide to do in this game with them will tell you what the Chiefs' plans are for them come playoff time.
One other quick note, just kind of on some of the happenings that have occurred here since last time we talked, and just looking at some of the stuff here. It does seem like per Andy Reid, there's a slim chance that we will see Jalen Watson back. Slim chance Jalen Watson returns, according to Andy Reid. I think if he's able to even sniff that, like that's impressive by Jalen Watson coming back from injury. But I mean, that would be a fun little boost if they were able to somehow get him back at some point during the playoff stretch as well.
Yeah. He would obviously be the preferred guy to come back, right? He would be the preferred one to come back and take back his spot. Andy being a little pessimistic about it, though, like, I think Andy's usually gives you a lot of nothing if something's possible, or is, just like talks about it in like the very open stance. Just he left the window open, but it sounded very unlikely. It sounds more like maybe if we get to the Super Bowl, he's available. And at that point, are you just going to drop him in the Super Bowl? Because obviously other guys played well to get there. So we'll have to see and monitor that one. I was just told by a couple people that his injury was quite a bit worse than what Isaiah Pacheco's was. Maybe not as bad as Brian Cook's last year, but I just kind of heard that it was somewhere in between, but closer to Cook's than Pacheco's, which probably means you're not coming back this year. It's just kind of like was my understanding of people that were kind of like explaining what happened to me, but we'll see. There's a slim chance, so we'll find out.
That's slim chance. We'll see. I don't know. It'd be nice to get him back. And I mean, hey, you said the corners have played a little bit better. That's been nice to see. Hopefully they're peaking at the right time. The Chiefs are going to need him to peak at the right time.
Listen, as long as you avoid the broad goals, then you're good to go.
I would love to play the Cincinnati Bengals as the week 7. Like, I don't get this. It's hilarious that they beat the Bills and they come into Kansas City with no defense, a place that they've already lost once.
The only downside of like playing the Bengals would be you don't get to play the Steelers or the Texans, right? Like, you'll probably not play this. That's the downside.
Bengals, Ravens. Yeah. Would you rather play the Bengals or would you rather play the Chargers?
Oh, Bengals.
Would you rather play?
I don't want to have to beat the same team 3 times, and especially because the Chargers find a way to make it nasty. I don't like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other thoughts before we start talking draft?
No, buddy. Let's get to the draft. No, honestly, this game doesn't mean a whole lot from the Chiefs' perspective. There's not even like we talked about all the guys that like you maybe want to see something out, but this isn't like a Chiefs team in years past where you're like, oh, I really want to see this player that's not getting any run right now. It's finally going to get like unleashed here. Like, there's not. I hope DeAndre Hopkins plays and gets his like chance at a touchdown for $500,000. Like, cool, do him a solid. Put him only in there in red zone reps and see if you can get him a touchdown for $500,000. Like, if they do that, that's cool. That's a very player friendly thing to do. If you don't fully understand, and maybe he wouldn't, maybe he doesn't like care. Maybe they go to him and ask and he says, no, I'm fine either way. But just, yeah, that's the only cool, like really cool thing that'll stick out. It's an incentive thing. Hey, maybe that happens.
Yeah, maybe some guys with they let Chris Jones get a sack with some of the incentives last year. So
I let him play a lot for that sack too.
That was a different situation. I think the vibes changed on that sack though. You just saw the energy got switched a little bit. But yeah, we'll see what this team does. I'd like to see them protect a lot of their starters. And we'll talk more about players we want to see in this game, get an extended look later this week. But we're going to take a break and we're going to talk NFL draft right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Maddie, how excited are you to talk NFL draft?
I can't even put into words. It's that time. We're here. It's draft time. I've barely done anything with the NFL since the Chiefs won on Christmas Day. I have just been watching prospects. I have been grading guys out for the KCSN draft guide. I have been watching bowl games because they're still fun regardless of what people say. It doesn't matter that Cam Ward sat out a second half of football. Nobody cares. Get over yourselves, people. But yeah, no, I'm excited for this. I'm ready for this, Kent.
You, me, and Craig all were on a Zoom chat this week watching prospects together. I missed that so much. We used to do that. We did it a lot more during like COVID too. It felt like
that's when that started.
We just did it. We would put tape on. We'd just Zoom together and have a lot of fun. And it was it made me happy. It was a lot of fun to do that with you and Craig earlier this week. I asked when we talked, me and Maddie were talking about like what, we want to talk about today when it comes to the draft. Like we can't get too granular with it, right? We can't get too specific about like, all these players. Two prevailing thoughts when I was thinking through some of this stuff. One being when you look at like this class, I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as some people have said prior years or in earlier in the year. I think it has some of the marquee players at certain positions, but I don't know. Do you think this class stinks, Matthew? Do you think it's like where does it stand for you? Like what do you think of this class?
I don't think it's a good class. I don't think it's very good. It's not terrible. There's always going to be talent in a draft. So many players have to come out. The way essentially just the world works and the way things are going to be distributed, there's going to be good players at every position. But there's going to be good players in every single draft. And with the way the rules work, if it's not a quote unquote good class, there's not good players. There's going to be a 5th-year guy that's got a ton of experience that looks really good compared to everybody else because he's been, he's a 23-year-old adult playing against children, and like it's just going to make him look better. That's not a bad thing. Like it happens, and those guys sometimes are good or bad. So it's never terrible, but looking through this class top to bottom, it's just, the talent's not distributed at the top. It's not very heavy. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of blue chip players coming from this particular class. If it does, it seems like it's a lot of guys that need to develop around into that level of player, or it's guys at positions that probably don't matter quite as much. And so like you combine kind of all that stuff, and I think you come away with a little bit of a weaker draft class. You really start to get into it too. I think this is our final year where I think, I don't know, now that Diego Pavia has petitioned for non-FBS players to get an extra year or whatever, but like this should be our final year of dealing with like the 6th-year guys, if I'm not mistaken. There's going to be a couple from now on, but not near as many. So this class has got some older guys in the middle rounds and late rounds. I don't think it's got premium talent at the most important positions outside of a couple guys, lower level of blue chips. That just kind of pushes all the midday talents a little bit higher. And I think that creates a generally weaker class. Now there won't be good players in it, just a generally weaker class than especially compared to like last year, whose class looks amazing.
Yeah. I don't think it was as bad as as the farther I've gotten into it, I just don't think it's as bad as some people have made it out to be. Not to say that it's not this like super strong class. It's just not as like the terrible tag has been thrown around on it. Like, I don't think it's terrible. I just don't think there's some flashy players at some of these positions. And like, I think there's good players at positions that the Chiefs might be looking at. So that was my first prevailing thought. My second prevailing thought was this draft could go so many different ways for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, because there are big decisions that they have to make at a couple key positions that could really tilt how they approach this draft. And I also am curious if the draft affects how they, deal with some of the situations that they have contractually, right? The Trey Smith, if Trey Smith situation, like if Trey Smith doesn't sign a deal with Kansas City, I think that they could be looking very early for an interior offensive lineman, and there are some earlier offensive linemen that could warrant even a first round pick if the Chiefs wanted to go that direction. If they didn't want to try to plug in a Kingsley Suamataia, like they could bring in competition. They could bring in a plug and play guard right off the top if they wanted to do that. If they take care of that position. Maybe they're not taking care of, the Nick Bolton of Nick Bolton's contract. Are they tagging Nick Bolton? Probably not, because it's a over $20 million tag because of some of the pass rushers leaking in. If they don't take care of Nick Bolton, I don't know if there's a great linebacker option for them to invest in early. And I don't think that's one of the weakest positions in this entire draft. So I think this thing could go so many directions. And so when I'm going through it mock draft exercise, which I'm doing all the time, I'm having to pick a lane for how I think the offseason is going to go. And you do that a lot of times anyway, but you have to define it a lot more this year, I think, than you've had to in recent years. I think it's very tricky looking at it right now in December, which direction this team could go with the draft.
The Trey Smith aspect of are you going to make Trey Smith the highest paid guard in the NFL? Are you going to make Nick Bolton the fifth highest paid linebacker in the NFL? What are you doing with those things? Are you bringing Justin Reed back now that you've seen Jaden Hicks play and getting better? Maybe you feel more comfortable with the Reed decision. If you're just trying to do that, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just kind of walking through some of the decisions they have to make. How much longer are you going to stick with Joe Thuney, as pivotal as he's been? Do you need to start looking for his replacement? Does that impact what you do with Trey Smith? There's a lot of stuff that the Chiefs have to figure out going forward with what they want to do. And then still at the end of the day, you got to figure out, are you going to pay Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson to play corner? Jalen Watson's coming off a great year, but then he got injured. He's had injury history. So are you going to be in the market for another corner to play with Trent McDuffie, who they absolutely should never, ever, ever consider leaving? Or are they going to be back in the market for him? Or are they going to pay Watson? Flip side, what are you doing about left tackle? Are you going to go draft another one yet again? Or are you going to run it back with the Wanya Morris, with the Kingsleys, and see what you get out of that? Have you seen enough out of Felix to say we're definitely good on defensive end? What do you do with Charles Minnie? They have a lot of decisions to make, and any good team has a lot of decisions to make. This is no different than any other Super Bowl winning or Super Bowl contending team year after year. I want to be very clear. It's not different. It's just, it's a little early right now to decide the direction that any team's going to try to go, because we haven't seen anything. We haven't heard enough rumblings coming out of it, but the Chiefs could absolutely go a lot of different ways, and they really got to figure out who they want to keep, who they don't, because they also have other positions that aren't roster decisions necessarily up for grabs, but they still probably got to figure out something at running back. They eventually got to add more talent to that defensive tackle room, whether Chris Jones, whether you're planning on Chris Jones being here for his full life of his contract or whatever it is, you need other guys there. You're going to need more passer. They're going to need guys at all these different levels anyway, on top of the guys that they end up losing. So fun, nervous, interesting path where they get to figure out how they want to go for it.
I think it's a massive offseason for them, and that's what's so fascinating.
They all are.
Yeah, this one seems bigger just because it feels like a pretty crucial turning point, because you're right. Hey, look, especially if you're looking at year ahead moves that this team might have to make, because that incredible draft class that they had in 2022, the Bills come and do for a lot of those players too. And so just there's a ton of decisions. I will say this, it's a great year. It's a great year to have an additional top 100 pick when it comes to not necessarily the strength of the draft class, which I think they'll be able to find good players in the top 100, but it's a good year to need more of those players on your team, because the Chiefs have that draft capital available to them when they need bodies at a lot of different positions, right? It's huge. And so it's been very fun to track the Tennessee Titans' demise. I'm hoping that they tank to secure one of the top 3 picks in the 2025 NFL draft, because that means the Chiefs will be picking in the top 67 with the Titans selection. That would be absolutely lovely. I think basically I've kind of looked at it there's a pretty good chance that they're picking 69 or earlier in the third round. There's an outside chance I think that they could be picking 72nd. I think the ceiling's about 72 for where they'll be getting that 3rd round pick. So they're gonna have 4 picks in the top 100 this year, which is a lot of fun. I think for them, as they're trying to build this roster, I'm sure they're gonna pay somebody, be it Nick, be it Trey. They're gonna pay somebody, I think, in house and keep that thing rolling. Then they're gonna have some stuff that they're gonna have to fill in the draft with those 4 draft picks.
Yeah, no, they're going to have to pick somebody. They're going to pick somebody or a couple people to go ahead and make sure that, they're going to have to fill some of the holes in-house. They're going to have to fill some of the holes in free agency because they don't have enough picks to go through and fill all this stuff out. So we'll see what they do and how they want to go about it, right? At the end of the day, it's about making Patrick Mahomes feel the most comfortable. So that's why I kind of think I always end up leaning towards Trey Smith. If that is a player that Patrick Mahomes wants, I think you figure out how to keep him and then you figure out the linebackers on the other side. It seems a little lofty to me, given the price tag of where guard and linebacker have gone lately, that you will get both of them with the Trent McDuffie contract looming. Eventually, you're going to have a wide receiver contract looming. You're probably going to have to pay another tackle. Looking at the Chiefs' lack of success at drafting them, I don't anticipate them hitting on a right and left tackle quickly enough that you won't have to pay somebody once Jawan Taylor's contract is up. So there's just a lot of money getting spent over the next couple years at big positions. So doubt you'll get to keep both. Pick the one you want. If Mahomes feels like he's okay replacing Trey Smith, if you have that conversation, it's something that he's willing to accept, that you got to find a younger guard because you're spending your capital elsewhere. Maybe it's Nick Bolton. If Mahomes says, no, I need that guy, I want that guy, well, guess what? Figure it out, Spags. Find another linebacker.
So, Wanya Morris has looked okay at right tackle. So you would maybe
got at least one more year at Jawan, though.
1 year bridge of Wanya maybe on his 4th year, if you wanted to go that direction. If you feel like Kingsley at guard, maybe, and then you don't, I'm just looking at paths like this could take. Kingsley at guard maybe does it. So here's my question to you, Maddie, because you kind of just jumped in. There's a decent pocket, I think, of tackles that could wind up being available to the Chiefs in the back end of the 1st round. Arante Ursary from Minnesota, who's actually a Kansas City kid, like a Josh Simmons, Joshua Connerly out of Oregon. Josh Simmons is out of Ohio State, by the way. He's recovering, played really good, was having a good year towards ACL coming back from that. Those guys potentially could be in a pocket of players that are available to the Chiefs at the end of the 1st round. Should this team go and try to spend another early pick on a tackle and try to fill the left tackle spot yet again and then do it that way? That's a big decision that they have to make. And it's when I'm doing it, by the way, when I'm doing these exercises, I've drafted tackle, DT, guard, wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, all in the 1st round when I'm doing these exercises. If it shows you how the range is of what they could do. But do you think this team should go and draft a 1st round tackle?
If they have a tackle that they have a 1st round grade on or the highest grade that they have left, nothing about what this team had. Trying to find the right way to phrase it. They don't have to come away in round 1 with the left tackle, although it would probably be preferred. If one of their best, if one of their best tier players and their best tier is a tackle, they should take that guy over other players for sure. Out of those guys you mentioned, I am partial to Josh Simmons. I think, he's dealing with an ACL injury. Offensive linemen and ACL injuries don't scare me too much anymore. It's not I get a little bit, not a lot, because ACL recovery repair has come such a long way. Very few guys that have clean ACL tears lose a lot of athleticism or any. And when they do happen, it's usually space players. It's usually athletes that are out in the field. It's not trench guys as much. So the ACL stuff doesn't scare me as much. I'm okay with Simmons. I would lean towards him. I think he's got the best combination. I think at this point in time, all I don't want to see the Chiefs do is take a developmental or more specifically a project offensive tackle. I don't need another guy that needs to be completely broken down and built back up because they kind of keep swinging on those and they've missed a few times and maybe not even missed. It's not fair to say that Kingsley or Wanya have missed yet, but they haven't hit the ground running and the Chiefs kind of need someone to come in quickly. And Simmons is the guy that seemed the most physically ready and mentally ready to come in right away and really compete. Not that he won't get better, but compete. So and all those guys you mentioned, I think are kind of there. Connerly maybe needs a little bit more time to just continue to hit the weight room, but still, I don't think that he's needs to be torn down and then built back up. those other two did. So just avoid developmental or project-esque offensive tackles wherever you take them. Get someone that's a little bit more ready, that's kind of already started to figure it out, because like they haven't had the best of luck with those other types of guys right now. And so if that's round one, have at it.
Yeah, so those are some
Quit relying on day two tackles. Quit relying on day two tackles. They don't hit very often, right? We shouldn't be upset that the Chiefs missed on a round 2 and a round 3 offensive tackle. Those guys don't hit very frequently. It's not common for those guys to become starters. Orlando Brown Jr. is the outlier, right? Like that's not common for a guy to become that level of tackle drafted on day 2. That's not normal. So like missing on those isn't like, oh my gosh, they did a terrible job, they have to quit, they suck at this. You just don't usually get good offensive tackles on day 2 of NFL drafts, especially at the end of round 2 and round 3.
Okay, so I've kind of dominated with a line of questioning over the last, 15 minutes. You need to cook. I want you to, like, you've got copious notes. Take it wherever you want.
Let's just talk some players. Like, with enough theory. Like, I think it's too early for theory, right? So let's just talk some players. Who's somebody that you have watched so far that you like, and like you could see having a very clear fit for the Chiefs, and let people know where, roughly what you like about him, but then roughly where you think that the Chiefs could look to draft him or something like that. Who's somebody you like early on?
Okay. Well, Simmons is one of them.
Good player.
Very good player. And like, I think it's like kind of like the discount. It's like a discount because he's coming out of injury. Like, I think that's,
if he stayed healthy and continued his level of play, not even gotten better, but continued his level of play, I think he was pretty clearly OT1. Like, I think some people are going to look at him and say, oh, you're taking him in round 1. You're not giving him a discount at all for it. No, we are. Because the only reason he's going to be available at the end of round 1 is because of the injuries. Like, that is a discount. I want to be clear.
Let's be honest. This is one of those pipe dreams that probably doesn't happen anyway.
Correct.
By the time we get to April, there's going to be a team way ahead of the Chiefs that probably loves him and is probably going to take the risk on him. I'll go Jonas Savaianea, though, as like an option for the Kansas City Chiefs, and a guy that I've kind of like. That was one of my first players that I really like was kind of interested watching, like, draft prospects. So he's played tackle at Arizona, and he's played it well. But he's a big kid that moves really well and like a lot of people anticipate that he's going to wind up kicking inside to play guard. Like, he plays well, but I think he's a little bit sawed off with his arm length. And like, there's some concerns there with some of the measurables to be able to hold up the tackle position. And the Chiefs typically adhere to that, but they really like players that have started out at tackle and then kicked inside. Jonas Savaianea, I'm going to have to figure out exactly what the pronunciation is, but I promise you I'll be rocking it by like February this year. He fits as a guy that kind of fits the archetype for what the Chiefs prefer in their guards, right? It's good movement skills. It's still physical and nasty, held up well at tackle, can play the tackle position, has the cross trainability that the Chiefs like, has the tackle background and kicks inside. Like, if you're talking about like a guard for the Chiefs moving forward, like, I think he's a really good football player that maybe a team doesn't feel as comfortable playing at tackle and they maybe don't want to invest in a guard. The Chiefs are looking to kind of plug and play and replace Trey Smith. Like, I think he could fit in very nicely at the guard position.
Yeah, no, I like him as a guard. I go back and forth on how I would feel about a guard in round 1. And I guess I'm not 100% sure you have to take him in round 1. Like, it felt like this year, everybody for Arizona besides McMillan was their wide receiver was kind of down from what they were last year. I haven't really dove all the way in. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get him at 64 though.
Yeah, and so that's my thought too. And so like round 1 guard, I'm a little up in the air about, because like letting Trey Smith walk to replace them with a round 1 pick of an unvaluable position it makes me feel some kind of way. And so like we can unpack that more as we get into the offseason. I like the player.
Well, hey, and like, can I give you one more counter? I know, and we can get super, but you're probably having to make the Joe Thuney decision. And you might, if in this scenario you're not paying Trey Smith, you might be paying a tackle. You're probably paying a tackle, so you need to keep trying to manage the cost of the offensive line. Like, you got to find cheap talent there, and you want something reliable like Jonas Savaianea. Anyways.
Yeah, no, and if you have a tackle to pay and you do that, that's fine. I just don't, round 1 pick, you better make me feel real good about tackle somewhere else. Like, that's kind of where that's going. And I don't know where that's coming.
That's kind of the scenario. And like, I think the Chiefs have to make a decision with one or the other, right? Like, one or the other has to be, a cost-effective option.
Do we go kind of safe, or do we kind of get just like out of pocket right? Let's get out of pocket right away. Round 1, we're all scarred by it, but we can do it again. We can do it. We can take the swing. Running back, Omarion Hampton. out of North Carolina. I get it. Everyone's going to want Ashton Jeanty. I think he'll be gone, but even if he is, I think Omarion Hampton is going to be the best running back from this class. He won't get my highest grade because I can't in good faith knock Ashton Jeanty enough in the grades to get him above where Hampton is. But when I watch Omarion Hampton move, I watch him run, I see him catch passes. I think that guy is going to be a star in the NFL. And this isn't the Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation where you have to use him in these specific ways for it to work. I think you can just put him out. You can roll the ball out there and say play, and he's going to be great. I have told Kent what my comp for him was the moment I watched him play. He is explosive Kareem Hunt in his prime.
Yeah.
Like it's what he is. He looks just like Kareem Hunt in his prime when he plays. He's got the big lower half, the way that his body control while moving at full speed, the way he can drop his shoulder pads and protect his lower body from hits. He's the opposite of Pacheco, and so is Kareem Hunt. Pacheco's thighs, you can hit them every time he runs because he can't get his pads down. Like he can't block his thighs from getting hit. And so he takes all these hits square to his thighs and it brings him down. You remember Kareem Hunt in his prime, or even still now a little bit, you don't get a clear shot at his thighs. He's either leaning out of the way, like he's still running full speed, but he's shifting his body out of the way, or he's dropping his shoulder to deflect the majority of the contact. Hampton gives me the exact same vibes. Same thing with guard. I don't know if I love running back in round one, but I watched this Chiefs team leave so many yards on the field because the running back play is just so middling to subpar. And they still had an efficient run game, but the running back play in particular isn't that great. You give me a dynamic player that I think can do it all like Hampton. I would very quickly go from I'm not too into that to really excited about it. And I understand the Clyde reservations. This guy is nothing like Clyde in that you're like, oh, you can run him on all these routes. You can use him at not running back things to make him worth it. Like, no, that's not what it is. He's a running back first, and then you kind of make everything else work.
Some of his running style, like another comp that I've had pop into my head a lot with him, not just like is Jonathan Taylor, which is the guy that, one of the guys that the Chiefs were considering at running back over Clyde is just like when you look at like watching him run out in the open space, like it just kind of reminded me of Jonathan Taylor too from that perspective. So like I'm a big Omarion Hampton fan too.
I'm tired of digging for the diamond in the rough, but it ends up being like a coin. It ends up being like a copper coin and a running back. Like, yeah, you can get by with it, but like I watch just other teams right now and the way the NFL's trending again, you're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to be a little bit more balanced. And the Chiefs leave just watch how much they leave. Watch another team, even the team the Chiefs play, and the Chiefs have a great run defense, but like when they I don't know, man. I think they could use an influx of talent to the running back room. And I admit you could pick some guys up later in day 2, maybe even early day 3. There's like pretty good running back class for all intents and purposes. I just really like Omarion Hampton, but like I'm tired of the late day 3 guys or the free agent flyers because like they just leave so much available for everybody else.
It's a very good running back class. And like there is some value. And like I've said, like if the Chiefs can afford to do it, I'd take one of these top 100 type backs and like why not swing for like an Omarion Hampton? But there's still some very good running backs in this class, maybe that aren't all as complete, but like you're talking about Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, Quinshon Judkins, and Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, Ollie Gordon, Nick Singleton out of Penn State is probably another running back that I really like. Probably he's more like a pick 96 type guy. Mm-hmm. He's your third round pick. The Chiefs will like him a lot because he's got great pass pro ability, great pass pro upside. Like he is physical and nasty. He's probably the best pass protector in this entire class. He's got that upside there. Freak athleticism, very good athlete for the position. I think, and it's vision for him. Athlete. It's just the vision. It's another Isaiah Pacheco situation, but you've got the athletic profile and you've got the pass protection ability, and you've got some home run potential. Like there's a lot of traits that you like here, and like he's got the physical profile that if you develop him as a running back, like he's got the upside to be something more than just what more than a third round running back. He's got the physical upside to be much better than that. So like. That's another guy, like as far as a running back, I'd be a big fan of.
Yeah, no, I love Nick Singleton. That's like, I was kind of like, him or Devin Neal, and end of round 3, beginning like the round 4 pick. That would be kind of like where I was like eyeballing like the sweetest spot of running backs. I even kind of have Jordan James. I don't know if out of Oregon, if he's coming out there, but like those 3 guys kind of in that area are the guys that I initially liked. But then I got to some of the other guys. I like Judkins. I like Travion Henderson. Like they're all good. And like, I'm not going to be upset when they take them, but just watching Hampton in particular, I was like, I think that guy's just a little bit different. I just think he moves differently. Yep. And the Chiefs haven't had a running back like him since that small stretch of prime Kareem Hunt. He's not the same type of player, Jamal Charles, but like those, when we're talking about like a guy of like that, I think can get close to those kind of heights in production, which you can say as much praise as we want about any of the running backs the Chiefs have had outside those guys since then. They're not coming with, no matter how many touches they get close to those guys. I think Hampton can get you close to that. So like, that's why I would be willing to take that swing. You got anybody else that you a big fan of early on?
Go Cook.
Ooh, back to me. So this is where I get a little torn. There's a couple smaller, bendier, fast edge rushers that I really like from this class that I just don't think Spags will care about, because just like with Felix, I'm afraid they'll come in, even if I think Mike Green out of Marshall is one guy. Oh God. And then you're going to have to pronounce this Boston College fellow's name. Donovan.
And Uzuriki?
Sure. Love both of them. Oh, and even Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. Like, I love all these guys. As like Kennard's probably a little bit more Spagsy, but I love these edge rushers. They have a real ability to win on the high side with speed, with their flexibility, and they can take over games as rushers. I think they're farther along as speed pass rushers than Felix was when the Chiefs took him. But the issue is still, I don't know if Spags will put them out there on the field often enough for it to be worthwhile. It might go the same route in which they have to get better versus the run. They have to bulk up. And as they bulk up, I wonder if they lose a little bit of that flexibility, because I think that's a little bit of what we've seen with Felix too, since he's been with the Chiefs. He seems a little bit more stout versus the run for sure, but I don't know if he has the same juice around the edge. So it's just all 3. I love those guys. And if they would come in and Spags would let them go, please do it and get some real speed out there. I just don't know if he really cares to use any of these fast edge rushers.
I botched it. It's Donovan Azayuraku. Sure. And Boston College was not even remotely close. I
didn't think that was right, but then I was like, sure. Boston College, number 6. You actually don't have to look that hard to find him, because if you watch Boston College, he's going to be in the other team's backfield 24/7, and he's barely going to leave the field as a defensive player, as a defensive lineman, as a pass rusher, which is crazy. His game versus Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Panthers, was one of the most dominant things I think I've watched yet. And I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel to find negatives. And the negative is, well, he keeps doing the exact same move. Yeah, he's winning every rep he does it, but it's still just the same move over and over again. So just great player. I just don't know how great he would fit in Kansas City because of the weight.
Yeah, I think there's a few of those types that like Steve Spagnuolo may not prefer if Steve Spagnuolo's still around in 2025, which I mean, anticipating is, but like, he's on the older side too, so you never know like what happens there. Do the Chiefs go through a change there? Yeah. Hopefully not. I'd rather Steve Spagnuolo stick around as long as he possibly can. I think the edge class is decent, right? And like I think there's some players that fit the Chiefs mold a little bit better than those guys.
There's some non-pass rushers.
Yeah, pretty much, right. And some guys that I think Spags might be into. Like I think I could see Chiefs. I could see Spags into Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State.
But either Ohio State player.
JT Tuimola. You could see him. Although, like, I think he might be a little bit more squattier build, less length. That's the only Tuimola that I'm
probably is.
That, like, Spags would be in.
Both Texas A&M defensive ends that haven't shown a lot as pass rushers, but like
LT Overton. I mean,
physical freaks. Oh yeah, there's the edge class has names, and so like it's the one position that like you're maybe like, oh okay, maybe this is like the high value position that's kind of got a lot of talent, but then like I said, I think it's a pretty hard split. You have some really undersized speed rushers that are really good again after the quarterback with speed, but I don't know how well many of them are going to be able to hold up versus the run. Flip side, you have some guys like a Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M. Like, oh, these guys can step on an NFL field tomorrow and probably physically hold up. But are they ever going to get any pass rush besides like one random bull rush per game? Because that's kind of all they're doing at the college level. And it's just there's talent there. I don't know if it's just like home run. This is definitely going to work talent at that spot. So Sad.
All right, more chances for Maddie Lane to cook before we get out of here.
Oh gosh, more for me.
Oh,
I think
gosh.
the cornerback class had a lot of hype around it going into the year. And I think a lot of people were like, "Ooh, this is going to be a great corner class." And there's still some of the really good talent at the top, but I don't think the depth was there. The top 100, top 50 to 100 depth, I don't think was near as good as he thought it was. Like before his injury, Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, I don't think was playing at like a surefire round one level. I think you saw the couple. Virginia Tech had two corners that were like Mansour and then
Mansour Delane,
I forget the other one.
Strong.
Yeah, and Strong. I just forget his first name now. Dorian Strong. Here we go. And so those two guys, I don't think either one of them played as high as well as they thought they would. Ohio State's corners, anytime they've gone up against good receivers, have been very handsy, like they're holding nonstop. None of them have really stood out. So it's just, I think a cornerback class that initially looked super strong coming into the year kind of flattened out a little bit. It's like, yeah, you still have Travis Hunter, Will Johnson right there at the top, and Morrison, Rovell, like these out of ECU. These are all guys that are good players. I don't want to say they're anybody bad. It's just, I think the corner class went from looking like it might be great to, it's just another corner class. You just happen to have two top 10 pick corners at the top. And then it's kind of a big gap for me until round two. I don't think any other corner besides those two top guys have really stamped their name of being a round one guy. So it went from super strong looking to I don't know, it might be okay. You might find some players in the second day, day 2, day 3 that look pretty good. One guy that has stood out to me though, I like Tommy Hill out of Nebraska. He's probably not going to, wow everybody just purely with the coverage ability, but he kind of he's really physical. He'll come up and play the run. He's going to press. He's going to be very pesty. Watching him, I was like, that's a Steve Spagnuolo corner. That's a Steve Spagnuolo corner. I can't really put it into better words other than he is always kind of in your way and pushing you around, beating you up a little bit. So Tommy Hill out of Nebraska, I think missed some time down the stretch with injury. I got to figure out how bad that was, but I really liked him when I watched him earlier in the season.
I think that's a good one. And I think there's some I think the Chiefs have to grab a corner at some point here, right? I don't think the strength of it is round one. I've played around with a Jahdae Barron at pick 32. I've played around with the
forgot him. He's probably round one worthy.
And I played around with Rovell at 32 as well. I know you don't like the profile of a ACL injury 24-year-old, 5th-year senior that was a
small school.
I get it. Tape's pretty good last year though. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't think the corner class is super strong, but it's not otherworldly. There's still some good players that can be had there, and there's some good players that fit. Darian Porter out of Iowa State could be another fit as well. As a guy length size, to be a Steve Spagnuolo corner. So there's that too. But I'll let you
one more take off. Oh yeah, no, this is for you. What general feeling on the wide receiver class, and where do you think the Chiefs should really start to look? Should it be if somebody falls in our lap in round one? Should it be we should take a guy? How does this fall the priority list for when the Chiefs should really start to look at wide receiver? And then how do you look at the class? Because I kind of have my thoughts on the whole thing too.
Don't like the class very much at all. Not a huge fan of it. We were watching we're watching Trey Harris out of Mississippi, and I'm not sure, some people see him as a mid 2, and I'm not sure I have a mid 2 on him. I think there's only a couple players that it's not a very good class. First off, it's not a very strong class. I think Tet McMillan and Luther Burden are the two top players. I know Luther Burden, if we're counting Travis Hunter as a receiver, sure, yeah. I don't know what to do with him. I'm gonna let the NFL do that. I think most people see him as a corner.
I think it changed this year. I think it changed. I think coming in, it was he's a corner that you maybe play wide receiver now and then. I think he showed enough as a wide receiver that people are okay, well, he might actually just be whatever one he wants to be now, and rather than having a strong lean.
So I Ohio State's Emeka Egbuka. I'd think about him in round one. And that's the earliest is I think if the right player, I'd think about him in round one. There's some overlap, I think, with Rasheed. I don't think the Chiefs are probably the best team at navigating and managing the skill sets and traits of guys to make them all piece together and make sense. So I'm not super worried about it as much as hey, that's still not another guy that you're, blowing the doors off of it and creating a ton of yak. But as far as a consistent, reliable target weapon type player like a Jackson Smith and Njigba. Like I think Emeka Egbuka is a very similar player like that. And like JSN's having a tremendous season this year. So like
It really
talent
is.
there, reliability and trust for, Patrick Mahomes over the middle of the field. Like you could talk me into him very quickly and easily. But outside of that, there's not a ton of players that I'm, through the moon over. And honestly, like when I do a lot of my exercises, I kind of ignore the receiver class. I don't like it. I think there's, I don't think there's a ton of great options for them there. So like, I'm not overly excited about this receiver class at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I really don't love this wide receiver class. Even your guys at the top, I don't think Teteroa McMillan's competing with the guys last year that we were all debating about, like where they all go and stuff like that. Like, I think you compare these wide receivers to most other classes, and they're very comfortably falling into wide receiver 3 to 5 for like the top one, whether that's McMillan or Hunter for you. I think most people have it either Hunter or McMillan at the top at this point. I think they're like struggling to crack the top 3 in most other like quality wide receiver class. Is that great? I think the depth almost gets even worse because like everybody real quick this year turns to like a role player. Like everybody really quick turns into, I don't want to say a one-trick pony, but like very specific usage unless they develop something they didn't show really at all or consistently at all in college. And for that reason, like I'm with you. Like, yeah, if Trey Harris is there at the end of round 2 and you want to get him to be your Justin Watson replacement and be this literal sacrificial X that just runs a lot of deep routes and occasionally catches some like contested catches over the middle of the field. No, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for his profile. I just don't know how much I love that. And even at round 2, like the value at round 2 is probably fine. I just don't know if I love that as a prospect in a whole, like as a whole in a vacuum, not looking at team specific needs. So yeah, don't love the wide receiver room. I haven't felt great about it. A few of the guys have a little too much crossover with Rashee Rice and Worthy, like together. Just a lot of guys need the ball in their hand. Like Tej Johnson out of Oregon, super fun player. I got to manufacture ways to get him the ball. And am I really going to take touches away from Worthy to give it to Tej Johnson? Am I going to take touches away from Rashee Rice to give it to Tej Johnson? I don't know. There's a couple other guys in like that same mold. So yeah, I just simply don't know about this wide receiver room. I think I feel better about, I'm not usually big on like late round 3, round 4 wide receivers. I think those guys are very much just close your eyes, throw a dart and hope it hits. Like that's kind of what the numbers say about those wide receiver spots. But the Chiefs I don't know if the Chiefs need a wide receiver 1 or 2. If one presents itself, sure, have at it. But I don't know if they need one. You can probably just get Hollywood back or DeAndre Hopkins or both or whatever. And then just maybe you luckily hope to come across one of those Rams style, not the Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupps, but like those Rams style wide receivers that just do all the dirty work, that run your end breakers, that block their ass off, that do that kind of stuff, and then end up with 400 yards and 3 touchdowns at the end of the year. You might be able to find some guys like that at the end of round, in round 3, round 4, or something like that. So wide receiver class kind of down. Probably makes it easier to pass on them for a team that, especially with us fans that always want to shove wide receivers off to them because they've been so poor lately. But like, this is probably the easiest time to go through a mock draft and just be like, don't think I really need to force a wide receiver here. Just don't think I need it. Don't feel a need for it.
I never do when I go through it. I really don't. No. I wind up just not. We're going to be at the East-West Shrine Bowl here in like 4 weeks. I can't wait. Hopefully we'll be talking about an AFC championship game during that as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We are well on our way to getting that KCSN draft guide worked on. Actually ahead of schedule this year.
Craig told me to shout out Kanata Mumpfield, the wide receiver from Pittsburgh. We did watch him. We all liked him a little bit. And for a not super fun wide receiver class, he was a nice, easy watch. So yeah, he's another mid-round guy that I think, yeah, that's a cool addition. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to get Craig's guy out there early.
No, it's great. He was indeed fun. That is going to do it for this episode of the KCSN or the KC Laboratory. I get to go home in 7 hours. I'm driving. I'm getting up at like 5 a.m. tomorrow. So can't wait to get home. But thank you all so much. Thank you for hanging out with me and Clark Griswold's Attic. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
More draft talk later in the week?
No.